And we are live.
Hello and welcome everybody to the 36th episode, if I'm not mistaken. Last time I believe was the 35th episode of Hell in a Handbasket. So lots of news going on, and it's an interesting day, December 11th. There's actually a lot of news that's breaking today. We're surrounding the Ukraine conflict, surrounding all the hullabaloo between Trump's recent statements about the EU. And then on top of that, of course, we have Venezuela going on. What the hell is going on in Venezuela? So we got to touch upon that. So I would say that, we agreed that we should start with Venezuela first and foremost. And so what it seems like, okay, so let's just get into it. So it seems like it's been like a month ago that military experts were predicting that this is going to happen, that there was going to be some kind of, do you mind showing my screen? That there's going to be some kind of military action that's actually going to take place. You know, if you know about the allegory of Chekhov's gun, you know, if there's a gun that you hang up on the wall during the play, it's because it's meant to be used. It's not for no reason. You know, the loaded gun, like the way that it's usually said is like, oh, it's got the loaded gun hanging on the wall, shoots off by the third act or something. So if you have all of this military buildup around Venezuela, and I've heard talk about, which I never even thought about, but our bases from surrounding neighbors of Venezuela. So we have ground troops that aren't that far. Then we have the aircraft carriers and all this other stuff that's going on, right? And this heated rhetoric. And then there was this controversy with Pete Hegseth and giving this kill 'em all order for this whole nonsense where recently the Donald Trump administration has been bombing Venezuelan like shipping boats, claiming that these are drug traffickers, you know, narcos, and that they that this is a kind of like terrorism, narco terrorism that they're calling it, which justifies this military action that we take. And the thing is, what I've heard is it's obvious that these aren't drug traffickers because apparently there's a setup. There's a way that these are generally done. Like you have 3 or 4 people on fast moving, you know, boats rather than, you know, 12 dudes. That's like a fisherman operation. So
no,
anyway,
you'd have like 2 people. That's it. Because
you'd have like a guy with a gun and a guy that's at the wheel. That's what you'd have. Right?
You're trying to pack as much drugs into that thing as you possibly can, right? So the fewer people you have to transport it, the better. So
and it's like, I mean,
clearly it's not.
That's not how drug running operations work, right? And you know, there was some talk about, oh yeah, you know, we were following submersibles that these drug trafficking terrorists are using, and the reason why they keep using the terrorist designation, why they keep throwing that in there, is because that's the justification. That's supposedly going to be the legal justification that these guys are, you know, just like war on terror type stuff. Well, same thing, you know, this is continuing the war on terror. How many Americans have died to fentanyl and all this stuff? But the thing is that fentanyl is not coming from Venezuela. The fentanyl is coming from Mexico. Well, China by way of Mexico, right? It gets into
it's not coming from China. Just stop that narrative right before you start it. There's nothing.
It's not true. You're saying, well, I mean, where else are the pharmaceutical grade fentanyl get? Where else is it being produced? I'm sure it has to be produced in a lab, some kind of large operation, right?
Well, these are just chemicals. Like you can use these chemicals for a lot of different things. So if they're saying that China shouldn't be selling chemicals to other countries of the world, like it's silly talk. Like China doesn't have anything to do with
fentanyl. Right. Fentanyl has legitimate medical uses, right?
Not only that, so do the chemicals too, right? So like it's a stupid argument. Nobody believes it. And everybody knows that, yes, if you want to stop drug trafficking, first of all, stop the people that are bringing it in, right? It's not the Mexican cartels that are pushing it in. Somebody's pulling it in, right? So stop those guys first and foremost. But that's too common sense for this bunch.
It's too many levels deep. It means like Americans, even if they have this kind of clue that, what was it? Bill Hicks, I think, is the one that said that America, we love to fight wars on all the time. Like that's our war is our solution for everything. War on poverty, right. War on terrorism, war on drugs. Right. And it's like, speaking of the war on drugs, we fought this war on drugs and drugs won the war. We lost the war on drugs. So,
well, everybody knows that this isn't a war on drugs, right? Like that's, again, it's a cover story that absolutely nobody buys, aside from like the really stupidest people in society.
Or maybe people that want to buy it. See, like, I think that for Donald Trump as a marketing kind of person, maybe he looked at it in terms of like, this is one that will hit on the raw emotions of Americans. Many Americans have lost somebody that died from fentanyl. So this can be like a legitimate enough cover story. And then there's going to be always the Trump sycophants who are going to go out of their way to always try to believe and justify it. All you need is just to muddy the waters a little bit.
But the waters are too muddied, right? There's too many points of contact in this whole narrative, right? That people are just looking at it and saying on the face of it, no, none of this makes sense. Like clearly they know that fentanyl, chances are most of the fentanyl that's being consumed in the United States is being created in the United States. But if you want me to humor, Donald Trump, yeah, sure, the Mexican cartels are probably pushing fentanyl and cocaine and whatever else they can possibly sell, because that's what drug cartels do. But again, you have there's 2 points. And then you've got this other point with China. You got this other point with Venezuela. Like none of it makes any sense. And like you said, we've already been through the war on drugs, the war on this, the war on that. People are tired of wars and they're particularly tired about these stupid narratives, because people are getting fed up now, because now you're insulting everybody's intelligence. Mm-hmm. Like, you mean to tell us that this war on drugs 2.0 just popped out of nowhere? People know what's in Venezuela. They know that there's a ton of oil there. They know that there's a ton of resources there. They're looking at this and they're saying, geez, here we go again with another forever war, another proxy war, something that's going to cost us a whole lot of money and we're going to see absolutely no benefit from it. Something that's going to get people killed, something that's going to piss people off anytime I travel to South America moving forward, so on and so forth, right? Like, there's so many reasons why people just don't want this. And I'll go back to the first and foremost reason. It's supposed to be making America great again. It's supposed to be America first. Like, that's what people signed up for Trump. But now they're just seeing Trump as being what he is, just another globalist shill. So, it's the same old guy. Same
I don't know, dude.
President.
In my experience, I have so I live in a conservative state. I run into a lot of people that are diehard Trumpers, and these people are Kool-Aid drinking. So I'll have conversations with people that'll be like, well, I mean, Trump did stop like 6 wars, and you're like, what?
Are these old people or young people?
So some old people, but I even ran into a young person that was totally buying the Kool-Aid, where he was like, he totally believed that this was a drug running operation. Like, he was not willing to be convinced otherwise. This person younger than me. So just hardcore Trump Kool-Aid drinking person. And like the one thing that they were like, the one thing they couldn't understand about Trump, like everything that Trump is doing is right. It's perfect. It's going the right way. The one thing I don't understand is the whole Israel thing. I'm like, okay. Everything else though, 100%, like Trump has gotten an A in this administration. It's almost like if Trump says it, it's almost like that's a reason to it's worth believing. Just because Trump has said it, just because Trump comes out there and he says over and over again that ended all these wars. Like, these people, they're not interested in being told that that's just not the case. This is just my experience.
It's not that they're not interested in being interested in hearing about this stuff. My guess is that people like that are just not interested in anything, right? Because you do have a certain percentage of the population who, you know, they just are completely tuned out with everything that's not within arm's reach of them. You know what I mean? Like, unless it's something, it's like local community news, don't care, right? And I suspect that there's probably a lot of that, right? Because I've seen that myself. I was born and raised in a small town myself, and I just know, like, you know, when you're in this little town, small town bubble, your kind of focus is on local community stuff, not so much on what's going on over halfway across the world. And you're not necessarily, or at least years ago, you weren't necessarily fed a lot of this stuff because you only had an hour of nightly news that they covered off. They glossed over world events in 15 minutes. You know what I mean? So it was never a big deal. But now in this day and age, with the internet and everything at your fingertips, yeah, these people are just totally not interested in anything. And,
it seems
you
to
know,
be like
that's fine.
Faith and hope is what it seems to be like. It's like, you know, the people realize they're getting screwed, they're getting fucked. They just don't know which side they're getting fucked from. And the answer is you're getting fucked from.
No, you just went on mute there, buddy. Yep.
Oh, I'm muted?
Oh, no, you're back. Okay.
Okay. Sorry, what was I saying? We were just talking about Donald Trump. Basically what it seems to me like is, I mean, I'm reluctant to say it because you constantly see it in the media, and I think that this gets weaponized and used in a way that is not as productive, but there is some kind of effect of cult of personality somewhat with people, where it's like almost like this. Here's how I explain it. Imagine you've never been interested in politics and you've never understood politicians speak. And here comes Obama, and you're like, okay, you don't really, that's a lot of fancy words. I'm suspicious of them. He's saying a lot of things, and he's saying nothing at the same time. You know, you're like that kind of person. Then along comes Donald Trump. This is the first time that this is a politician that you can understand, and he speaks directly to you. You feel like that, right? You don't want to let that go. It's almost like a continuing hope. And they're willing to swallow a lot of complicated stuff in order to kind of maintain that. Because what else do you have? Otherwise, you have to admit that, nope, Donald Trump is just as corrupt and just as screwed as the rest of them, and there's no reason to have ever put your hope in you know, a narcissist, whatever.
But I suspect that these people are outliers. Like, they're not a huge percentage of the population. My guess is a whole lot of people parked their vote with Donald Trump because they were so absolutely disaffected with the Democrats for very good reason. And they parked their vote with Trump because they looked at him and they said, oh my God, if he can sort out Ukraine, if he can sort out Israel, if he can close the borders, if he can do all these things that he's talking about, we're all going to be thrilled. Yeah, and he hasn't done any of it. And that's the problem. So all of these disaffected people, what I think you're going to see, and I told you this back when Trump first got elected, the episode right after I think he got elected, I said then on this very show, I said, voters are going to give Trump a very short leash, and then they're going to turn on him if he doesn't do what he says he's going to do. And now they're turning on him. And so all those people that perked the votes, what I think is going to happen next election, you're just going to have such a pool of disaffected voters who just they've tried it left, they've tried it right, they tried it Obama, they went Trump, they went Biden, they went back to Trump, and now after 20 years they see, you know what, it's all the same bunch. So I really
they don't
think
see that though. This is what I'm saying.
What I'm saying is you're going to see that. I think you're going to see a whole lot more disaffected voters next election. because they've just given up. I'm one of them, by the way. Last election was the first one I never voted in because I just don't see the point anymore, you know. And I voted every, you know, municipal election,
You're a good
whatever.
citizen.
Yeah, was a good citizen. And I finally just washed my hands of it all because I said, I don't see the point anymore with the, you know, these uniparties in power. And until I see change, what's the point? And I think you're going to see a whole lot more like me next election. I really do.
Yeah, I mean, I want to say that makes sense to me, but if you're living in a completely different alternative universe where you're saying that no, Donald Trump did end a bunch of wars. There's a conspiracy to prevent him from getting the Nobel Peace Prize because he's so good.
Though, those are the outliers. Like, you're never going to change their mind. They're hardcore Republicans, hardcore Trumpers, hardcore MAGA, whatever we want to call them. These are the people that, you know, you could produce video evidence of, you know, whatever damning stuff that Trump says, does, whatever, and they'd still, no, I don't believe it. Right. So you're never going to change those people.
But how many of those people are there, though? I think that you think that there's fewer of them than I think. I somehow think there's more of them.
No, I don't think so. I think you're probably looking at, well, how much of the vote did Trump get? 50%. So let's say that, you maybe have 10% who are hardcore,
ride or die Trump.
Ride or die. You've got 20% who are traditional Republicans, let's say. And that, it wouldn't surprise me at all if 20%
got votes because he definitely got votes because people didn't like Kamala Harris. So he won even those votes for sure.
Yeah, and I don't think that 20%, I don't think that 20% is way out of whack. Now, within that 20%, let's say that next election, even 2% of that 20%, geez, I don't even know what kind of math I'm doing right now, but the 2% of the 20%, that's still a huge number. That's tens of millions of people who are going to just, you know, not vote. And remember the last election, remember they were always talking about the missing voters, voters from 2020. They weren't missing. They just didn't decide to vote because they didn't want to vote for Biden. Yeah. And you'll see the same thing next time for Trump, for sure. Right. And you'll see it for whatever Democratic Party too, because I think that there's just a lot of people who are going to say, yeah, let me know when the revolution starts and I'll be right there with you. Until then, what's the point? What's the point? What's the
idea is to continue Trump's, you know, quote unquote legacy with somebody like JD Vance taking over the reins. Then yeah, I guess I could see the people checking out, and I could see some of those Trump, because we've seen areas where Trump won, where the Trump supported candidate, the Trump backed candidate did not win. So I don't know. Yeah, I guess we'll see how much accountability there will be to pay for the America First movement, or whatever this is, right? This isn't even America First. Who the heck knows? But it's almost like Trump's hijacking of people's sentiment for a desire for America First.
Well, people look at this Venezuela thing and they just say, well, it's the same old crap. He's just like the others. And none of this is going to help me pay my mortgage, right? None of this is going to help me put gas in the car, put the kids, you know, pay for healthcare, whatever it is. None of this is going to help me. And that's what people are getting to now. Like, you know, the good times are over, man. Like, just look around. I'll bet you're out in farm country. How many of them are bankrupt now? Lots of them.
More and more.
2025 was a record year. So, you know, that's what people are concerned about. And this doesn't help. And it certainly doesn't help, you know, John Q. Public in America. It certainly doesn't help anybody in South America. and they will turn on this like you won't believe. Just watch, because that whole strategy document that came out and this piracy, countries aren't going to put up with that. They're going to band together. Just watch. And
I think that you're probably right. Where other countries are looking, what's the saying? They're there before the grace of God goes out, or whatever, right? They're going to see this, and they're going to be looking at America's increasingly belligerent behavior in their so-called hemisphere.
It's also not like 1800 anymore. Nobody gives a shit about the Monroe Doctrine. Like, it's laughable in the 21st century. So, none of that's going to happen. You're not going to.
I think they're going to
you're just hold on to that.
I think they're going to hold on to that Monroe Doctrine.
Well, they can, but no one else will, and that's the thing. America doesn't have the power to enforce any of this anymore. They don't have the money. They don't have the influence.
Well, about that, look at that. Why haven't we gone into Venezuela yet? And I'm starting to think that
because you'd all die. That's why. That's entirely why.
I think that we're realizing this. I think that the reason why I think they climbed up this tree and now they don't know how to climb down this tree, and they've figured out this is not going to go well. This is not going to go well domestically. This is not going to go well on the battlefield. This is not going to go well for us. Venezuela is bigger than Vietnam.
How many of those $99,000 Chinese missile systems are heading over to Caracas right now as we speak? You know what I mean?
Russian anti-shipping missiles, modernized Russian jets, right? So I think that Venezuela is in a position to imagine if they do take out an aircraft carrier. Whoa, what would that do? It would ruin the Trump administration. I think that the Trump hardcore that we talked about, the ride or die Trumpers, even they would have a hard time with that would be like a whoa, we lost an aircraft carrier, holy crap. So I think that would send a chilling effect down everybody's spine, and this is why we haven't gone in. This is why we've been sitting there for months.
Even if nothing got sunk or anything like that, just keeping them all there, do you know how costly that is? It is so unbelievably costly, and they're out there doing fuck all. So it's the most expensive bunch of pirates in the history of piracy is basically what it is. So I think it's going to fail. All it's going to do is accelerate the infrastructure building that's going on in South America right now. So they're building that train rail from Brazil over to Peru.
Yeah.
Really easy to, head that up north to, Venezuela too while they're at it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
Caracas in on what Caracas got stuff to sell, man. So,
well, like I said, it's 2025. It's not 1800 anymore. Like, people are going to make the commercial deals that they're going to make, and that's not going to stop. So, I could be wrong, but I don't think I am.
Let's take a look here. This is today's news. What we have. So what Trump's latest dramatic Venezuela move means. So what's the Venezuela move? The Trump administration's seizure of an oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela is one of the most dramatic twists yet in a military pressure campaign against Venezuelan dictator Nicolas Maduro. The boarding, the Venezuelan dictator Nicolas Maduro's won overwhelmingly in Venezuelan elections are extremely difficult to cheat at, because you have to have like photo verification and thumbprint and stuff. So, and all of the international observers that observed Venezuelan elections said that they were free and fair. So, dictator who won. Meanwhile, Zelensky's not a dictator, I guess. The boarding of a foreign ship is an unusual step and expands a U.S.
Unusual step. Not an illegal step. It's just unusual.
Yeah.
Okay.
Expands a U.S. operation already highlighted by strikes against more than 20 boats in the Caribbean and Pacific Ocean that the administration claims carried drug traffickers. Early reports suggest the swoop by U.S. coastal personnel with the backing of the Navy and law enforcement agencies poses fewer legal and constitutional concerns than the campaign against the boats and Trump's imminent threats of military action.
Fewer legal and constitutional concerns. What legal and constitutional concerns? It's in international waters.
Yeah.
It's against a ship that, is not even of your country. And you're going in, you're seizing it, and you're taking the contents. That's piracy, according to international law textbook. So the U.S. is committing piracy right now. There's no constitutional question about that because it has nothing to do with the Constitution. What is CNN talking about?
When they say constitutional, how do they put it? Fewer legal and constitutional concerns, right? I think what they mean is you're going to get fewer senators, let's say, breathing down your neck, complaining about the violation of America going to war again, despite,
okay, it's still
all of this. So they're trying to basically finesse it that way. Well, sure.
This is why nobody likes Americans, right? Because it's just so...
Yeah, rules for me, arrogant. Not for thee. Exactly.
Go on.
We'll rewrite our rules, and we'll even break our own rules. Okay, the vessel.
All this is going to happen is lead all of South America to band together, and they're just going to increase and accelerate trade with China. Just watch.
Yeah, out of necessity. The vessel.
Not out of necessity, but not out of necessity. Actually, they're already shifting. They've shifted whatever they can over to China already, but moving forward, it's just going to be,
Yeah, but if you're trying to not undermine your own sovereignty, like think about the recent, which I guess we didn't cue this story up, but think about the recent national security defense strategy document that came out, where they talk about, again, trying to lock down kind of our hemisphere and focus less, and they have like language that maybe is less aggressive towards Russia in particular, still calling the Russians an adversary, but trying to kind of...
But it's just, like I said, it's Monroe Doctrine 2.0, but it's not 1800 anymore. Like, the Americans never asked anybody in South America what they thought of that. And everybody in the South America are like, yeah, okay, whatever. We're going to keep trading with China.
Yeah.
So
we'll see, man. I think that the saving grace is that we can't pull this off. I think that the reason why we haven't gone into Venezuela is because it won't go well, and we know it. It won't go, basically we can't do it. We can't do it politically and even physically, militarily. Well, it's not going to go well.
And economically too, if the U.S. keeps doing this, countries are just going to quit trading with them.
Yeah, we're all going to become more and more of a pariah, continue to become more and more of a pariah. The vessel, the skipper, was seized in international waters and was carrying Venezuelan crude, a senior U.S. official said. A federal judge had previously issued a warrant for its seizure because of alleged links to Iran-backed terror groups. Still, Trump's relish in announcing the takeover of the ship and Attorney General Pam Bondi's release of a video showing U.S. personnel rappelling onto its decks from a helicopter underscore the political significance of the moment. With his characteristic flair for the dramatic, Trump announced to the press that the U.S. had boarded a large tanker, very large, largest one ever seized, actually. While the tanker might not have been directly related to the current showdown between Trump and Maduro, its interdiction will be seen in the context of a massive U.S. naval buildup in the Caribbean, which is part of an attempt to force Maduro out of power or convince his subordinates to oust him. So, I feel like that's really the secret hope. The secret plan is maybe we could just put enough pressure and just scare him out of there. But it doesn't seem like Maduro is... Not only does it seem like he's scared of it, it doesn't even seem like the type. He seems like the type that...
Well, but it has nothing to do about Maduro, though, right? Because anybody who was opposed to Maduro, they left a long time ago, man. Like, the people that are there now, they support Maduro. And, because, the majority of Venezuelans that are there right now, they all support him, and they're all picking up arms. So, did you see those videos? They were going all around YouTube, social media. People just picking up arms, like enlisting in whatever militia
right,
thing that
which is
Maduro has
hilarious.
going.
If he's a dictator, wouldn't he not want to arm his supposed, serfs? Right. No, obviously, it's just on its face. But yeah, I mean, I think.
Yeah, the idea of traipsing through some Amazonian jungle doesn't sound like a good idea to me.
Yeah,
but what do I know?
And the not only does Maduro exude this confidence, right? You see this recent thing where he was playing the xylophone so on TV, on Venezuelan TV. All right, I should put that in for Two Scoops of Crazy. But I think Maduro himself is giving off that kind of macho, almost Trump-like energy, and he's a good leader and a good figurehead, I think, for his people. Like he has rallied them to a large extent, especially his base, right? The lower classes and the poorer people that were responsible for Hugo Chavez's and rise and Maduro's continued dominance at the top of Venezuelan politics. And the Venezuelan people have been very, very we remember the stories back from, was it Obama's days, right? Where they sent in CIA people that thought that they were going to create a revolution, and the people that took them out were fishermen. So they have armed fishermen. Maybe that's the real reason why we're bombing all these fishermen boats. We're like, we're taking out their advanced coastal defenses. These fishermen can't be trusted. They have AKs. But it was fishermen that stopped that plan. And then there were other cartoonish attempts at trying to overthrow, not the least of which was both Juan Guaido and the more recent Corina Machado or whatever, who won the Nobel Peace Prize, which there was news that it was the U.S. that got her to, footed the bill for her to fly and do all of the appearances and all this stuff, right? So anyway, I think that we've not been able to crack that code, and we've not been able to scare Maduro, and it's not going the way that we wanted, and we don't know what to do next. We have to climb down from this tree, I feel like, and maybe they'll try to climb down from it kind of like they did with Iran. Maybe, bomb a couple of things, say that they destroyed some fentanyl plants or some cocaine farms or whatever, and then call it a day and go home, and say mission accomplished. Yeah, maybe that's how it all ends. What's at stake for Trump in Venezuela? Millions of Venezuelans would welcome Maduro's departure after grim years of an authoritarian regime that has impoverished the country, imposed repression, and forced millions of people to flee poverty and persecution. I wonder why the hell Venezuela is experiencing economic difficulties. It has nothing to do, of course, with the fact that we've sanctioned to hell and we've been fighting economic warfare on them ever since the communists took the oil back, right? So Washington controversy over Trump's intentions in Venezuela is less about whether Maduro's exit after ignoring his loss in a democratic election would be beneficial. They just say that as if it's true. Jesus. Would be beneficial, and more about whether the U.S. president is acting legally. Critics fear Trump is preparing to embroil America in another prolonged foreign policy misadventure as he again seeks to flex unchecked executive power. This right here, this is the real thing about the Constitution, quote unquote. They don't give a crap about what they're actually doing. They care about this. Like in the game of politics, this is a potential vector of attack against our Venezuela policy. Legal questions are more acute over the strikes against alleged drug traffickers in the Caribbean and Pacific Ocean that have killed 87 people. Jeez. The administration insists that it is justified in using legal military force against what it brands are narco-terrorists, right? Again, narco-terrorists. We discussed why this distinction and nomenclature is important. That threaten American national security. See, it threatens American national security. But Venezuela is not regarded as a major fentanyl trafficking route into the U.S., as the administration insists. And rights groups warn that the boat attacks infringe on the due process of the victims and amount to state-sanctioned murder by the administration. What else is new? Why are you getting upset about that? One of these strikes on September 2nd promoted Democrats and human rights groups to accuse the administration of a war crime, as it involved a follow-up strike that reportedly killed survivors of the initial U.S. attack. We'll be touching on that in a second. Democrats are intensifying a campaign to force Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth to turn over video of the attack to Congress. Trump had earlier said on camera that he had no problems with such a step, but later denied making the comment. News of the tanker's seizure and deepening intrigue over the double tap strike came as doubt still shrouded Trump's aims in Venezuela. The symbolic weight of the massive U.S. naval force off the country, which includes the most advanced U.S. aircraft carrier, the USS Gerald Ford, means any resolution to the crisis that does not lead to Maduro's ouster would be a rebuke to U.S. power and Trump's prestige. I don't know. That
wasn't the Ford the same carrier that got the Houthis chased out of the Red Sea?
I do believe
I'm pretty sure it was.
Mm-hmm. Trump had meanwhile repeatedly warned that strikes against what he says are drug trafficking sites on land could start soon. This is today's news, but in an interview with Politico this week, he declined to discuss military strategy and said opaquely that he wants the Venezuelan people treated well and to be respected, quote unquote. CNN reported on Wednesday that the Trump administration was working on plans for what would happen in Venezuela in the event that Maduro fell or left. I think we're far off from that. No reason to start making plans quite yet. No reason to dance on Maduro's grave quite yet. Critics of the Trump approach have drawn comparisons to the U.S. failure to prepare for regime change in Iraq in 2003 after the U.S. invasion. Some analysts fear that Venezuela could descend into violence and instability if the Maduro regime falls, and that it could prompt a refugee crisis. I thought there already was a refugee crisis from all the people fleeing all the dictatorships, And that it could prompt, but the situation there bears little comparison to post-war Baghdad. In another development that could increase pressure on Maduro's regime, Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado dramatically left hiding in the country and traveled to Oslo, where her daughter had earlier accepted the Nobel Peace Prize on her behalf. Maduro's government had warned that she would be considered a fugitive should she leave Venezuela, but her emergence in the outside world may also present the Trump administration with new opportunities to highlight her cause. Shipboarding normal, former U.S. intelligence official says. The U.S. seizure of the tanker, Skipper, took place on the basis of a search warrant related to past activity transporting sanctioned oil from Venezuela and Iran, according to General Pam Bondi, Attorney General Pam Bondi posted on X. She said FBI, Homeland Security investigations, and the U.S. Coast Guard were involved with support from the Department of Defense.
So a search warrant that has no legal standing anywhere because it's outside its jurisdiction. So they're going through a paper exercise just to say that they got a search warrant, and people are supposed to say, oh, okay, well, they got a search warrant, so it's right there. Think with your brains, people. This was in international waters. Whatever nonsense Pam Bondi is talking about is pure nonsense.
It is pure nonsense. And I think that they just hope to slip it under the nose of people by just saying it like that. Venezuela has some of the
world's... That's why people need to think a little bit, right? Like, when you're reading this stuff, just don't gulp it down. Well,
I think that if you're reading this stuff more and more, because the people that actually go out of their way to go to CNN politics, right? Are probably actually a minority of news consumers. I feel like most news consumers are, watching their favorite YouTuber talk about, trans sports or something like this, which is like the popular politics of the day.
Go to the next paragraph. I think they sum it up perfectly.
Well, really quickly, I think this one has some cool part. So. Venezuela is one of the world's biggest, at least illicit sales are a key of source income for its regime. Wait, if Venezuela is selling its own oil to, I don't know, let's say it's Iran, and that's illegal? How is that illegal? What are you talking about?
It's not.
Oh my gosh, exactly. The The first and second Trump administrations and the Biden administration maintain multiple layers of sanctions against Maduro regime for its suppression of democracy, including against state-owned oil and natural gas company PDVSA. Okay, the government in Caracas condemned the seizure, arguing that it laid bare the true motivation of Trump's pressure campaign. It is not migration. It is not drug trafficking. It is not democracy. It is not human rights. It has always been about our natural wealth, our oil, our energy, the resources that belong exclusively to the Venezuelan people, a government statement said. Yeah, I mean...
No lies detected there.
Yeah, exactly. It sounds like everything is totally... But meanwhile, what is CNN saying? That Venezuela is behaving in an illegal manner when they sell their own natural resources to their own customers, their own clients. Oh my gosh. So what if... let's say Venezuela gets their panties up in a bunch over some issue with Colombia, and then they sanction Colombia, and then when I don't know, Colombian coffee gets sold to the United States, Venezuela says United States and Colombia are both violating what did they say? But are both engaged in illicit sales. What everybody would laugh them out of the room, right? Why is it any different when freaking Pam Bondi says it? She should be laughed out of the room too. Okay. Beth Sander, former senior U.S. intelligence official, told CNN's Jake Tapper that the seizure of the Venezuelan oil tankers was absolutely normal as part of an attempt to prevent the regime transporting sanctioned oil. Quote, in the past, everybody has wanted to pick up these kinds of tankers, but we hadn't had the assets in the region to do it. We've always wanted to engage in piracy. Guys, this has always been the plan.
Okay, Beth, then it's not absolutely normal if you've never done it, you bimbo. Like, what is she talking about?
Dude, they do this. We've already detected like 5 contradictions.
It's absolutely normal in our minds.
Like they say something and then they turn around and just completely contradict and throw out the window what they say. Jeez. Okay.
And she was a senior intelligence officer. Good, help us all.
Well, this is why she was a senior intelligence officer. If you spoke like you had actually a little bit of intelligence, you probably would never make it to senior intelligence officer. Okay,
I've been smoking dope all day, and I'm picking this stuff up. Okay, yeah. Continue.
Yeah. Democrats on Capitol Hill are unwilling to take any actions related to Venezuela at face value. Asked on CNN whether the U.S. was now closer to a war with Venezuela, Representative Chrissy Houlihan, who sits on the House Armed Services Committee, said, "How could we possibly not be closer when we are repelling men and women from our military out of helicopters and descending on civilian tankers flying the flag of another nation? It is definitely escalatory. There is no other way to put it." She added that if Trump's aim was regime change through military force, he was constitutionally required to get an authorization from Congress, though she believes that such a step was not in U.S. interests. See, this is why when they're talking about all constitutional concerns, that's why they care about. Like this paragraph right here kind of gives you a little bit of insight. Well, if you're doing regime change, then you have to go through Congress, right? Well, I'm not doing regime change. I'm protecting American national security from drug terrorists, from drug trafficking, So that's the justification. Anyway, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, meanwhile, told Tapper on, quote, the lead, that's the show, on the lead that Trump's rhetoric was so unclear that it was impossible to know what his true intentions are. That's because he doesn't know what his true intentions are. He's screwed. President Trump throws out so many different things in so many different ways. You don't know what the heck he is talking about, Schumer said. If Maduro would just flee on his own, everyone would like that. But Schumer added, you cannot say, I endorse this, I endorse that, when Trump is all over the lot. Then yeah. Like so much in Trump's second term, there's little public transparency about the president's goals that often seem to depend on his personal whims. Trump prizes unpredictability. He thus made no attempt to explain to Americans why so many service personnel are on ships off the Venezuelan coast or what the expensive deployment is supposed to achieve. Again, why? Because he doesn't know what he's going to do. What do you think? Donald Trump is like a big strategist? Donald Trump, tell us what your next plan and your great strategy is. Donald Trump doesn't know what the hell is going on, dude. If the president were to successfully oust Maduro and transition Venezuela to a democracy, he could claim a significant political win. He'd also cement his goal of exerting American power throughout the Western Hemisphere, an aspiration consistent with his recently unveiled national security strategy. Touched on that. This appears both an attempt to reshape Latin America and its own MAGA image and a more traditional U.S. strategy to counter Chinese and Russian influence in the region. History shows that even in extreme circumstances, dictatorial regimes constructed over decades are more durable than outsiders believe. The Venezuelan government has been compared to many layered criminal operation, which key members have huge financial stakes in perpetuating their own power. And while many outsiders hope that Trump's pressure will lead to the rise of the country's rightful democratic rulers, nothing is certain. Geez, man, CNN is so insufferable. Oh man, it's hard to read. But the seizing of the tanker cranked the pressure on Maduro up yet another notch, and it led Trump further down what is beginning to look like an inexorable path to a confrontation in which he is investing huge personal credibility. Yeah, well, I really want to know what it's almost like maybe the tanker seizure is an attempt to try to do some climb down. I don't know, but I don't see, with us not just talking about it, just talking and talking and talking for months now, it doesn't seem like they have the confidence to go all in on Venezuela.
Well, here's my thought, and I'm sure we'll talk about Ukraine, but
yeah, we should. Oh, we still got time.
Like if we step this back a bit and we look to the very beginning of the Trump presidency, right?
Okay.
Their position on Ukraine, and I keep saying this, and I keep hearing, oh, Trump is all over the map. No, he's not. The Trump administration has been crystal clear since J.D. Vance gave that speech at Munich. And he straight up said, we're pulling out. We're happy to sell you guys weapons, but we got other shit to deal with. And everybody said it to these Euros, and they still don't get it because they're still trying to live in denial or whatever. But I think Trump's at the end of his rope. So what I think is happening, and I got nothing to prove this, but this is the United States in a way kind of saying, yes, we are pulling out of Europe. So at the same time they started building up Venezuela, they were also having those talks
about winding down Ukraine,
and throwing that out there, right? So I think what they're trying to do now is put a little bit of pressure on the Europeans, and I'm not suggesting that they're doing this just because of Ukraine, not at all, but they want to show that this strategy document that they put out, they want to show with action. Nah, we're pulling away from you guys. We've been telling you this now for months. We're sick of telling you, so now we're just going to do it. And now we're going to show you what we're going to do because we're going to focus on that Western Hemisphere.
I think that there was a period, remember the whole Keith Kellogg debacle, I think there was a period where Trump was convinced that, no, Ukraine could still do it. And he made even some statements about that. Like, why not? They could take Crimea and more. So I think there was a period of time where he was convinced, and then he's starting to see it a little bit more clearly now, I think.
Well, and I also think they're trying to set up their poll, right? So it's also not by coincidence that the same time this is happening, you've got Trump proposing that C5, right? You heard about the Core 5?
No.
So Trump was floating the idea the other day about the Core 5, aka the C5, aka a replacement to the G7, which would include China, Russia, India, the US, and Japan. A BRICS
alternative.
Yeah, exactly. So perhaps what he's also trying to do simultaneously to back out of that shithole in Europe. Now we're going to go focus on our poll. And now I'm also going to propose this. So you kind of see how it's all coming together from Trump's perspective or the administration's perspective. Because keep in mind, Trump never came up with any of these ideas. You know, this is the US's way to say to the core five who matter right now, which is Russia and China. Okay, guys, this is how we're going to do it. This is our poll. This is the kind of shit you can expect us to see. China, if you guys want to do the same in the South China Sea, be our guest. Like maybe they're trying to set the framework for that too.
I don't know. I think that even going through the national security or rise national security strategy, it doesn't seem like they're taking a step back on China. I think it seems like there's a little bit less harsh language comparing it to previous in regards to both Russia and China, but especially Russia. They're a lot less aggressive towards Russia in this, in their language. Now they don't, mind you, they don't.
Keep in mind though, regarding China, the last time they did their little paper, they referred to China as a national security threat. In this one, they just referred to China as a competitor, which is a big step down diplomatically, right? And I think the Americans have sobered up to the reality that they just can't compete with China. Like they've been crunching the numbers and they said, holy crap, we're so many decades behind on infrastructure spending and this, that, the other thing. Our supply chains are shit. You know, we don't have any factories. You know, I could go down the list. So I think that they've kind of sobered up to say, okay, the best we're going to do is get our poll. The best we're going to do in this new world, we need to go get out in front of this right now and insert whatever influence we have left. So we're going to promote this core five. We're going to try to shore up our poll. Europe, Lockheed is open for business if you need weapons, but we're out. That's the deal.
They have, even though the language is not as confrontational, there's not a lot of indication, I think, that they're really trying to shift and pivot. Because I mean, they still refer to like the overarching goal, the overarching need to maintain hegemony and to prevent the rise of regional hegemons. So they still imply it, but they're just not as confrontational in their language. And so I don't know how much of that is a change in policy or more just a change in approach. Maybe like, okay, we got to take a step back. We understand, but we're still going to try to.
Oh, yeah. Don't get me wrong. They're going to try to impede China's rise in any way they possibly can. But I think they're starting to realize that the levers they thought they had, they don't have. And same thing with Ukraine. All the levers that they thought they had, they didn't have. Whoever they have doing this sort of geoeconomic analysis for them should be drawn and quartered because like they just keep getting this stuff
it's probably
wrong.
Freaking Keith Kellogg. Remember, I kept calling him a freaking American traitor. This guy's a traitor to the country.
Yeah.
So
that's like they've been crunching the numbers, man. I'm sure of it. And that's why, it's sad to say, but everything is coming together like we've been talking about all these months about just the economic collapse is getting sooner and sooner by every day.
And more and more apparent, more and more clear.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't know if you notice silver. Silver is like on a tear since we last talked about it.
Really? Oh, man.
Oh, yeah. I'll try to dig up a chart if I have it because people are just like, okay, we're sick of this stock market casino. We got to get our money into real stuff.
Well, think about it. They're voting with their wallets.
Yeah. People see the inflation, right? Like you can't tell somebody who can't afford groceries that, hey, the stock market's going great. Right? Because they don't care. They're concerned about those groceries, right? And that's where a lot of people are at right now. And
or about they're affording a home, this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
affording a living situation. Okay, let's try to hit up on this peak. We're going to start running out of time, so let's try to hit up on this peak Hegseth thing, which I alluded to earlier. White House gives chilling update on Hegseth kill them all order. So if anybody doesn't know, there was an event supposedly where they hit a boat, and there were 2 survivors of this boat, and they were apparently scared shitless, that swam back to the boat, and Pete Hegseth gave the order to double tap. And the reason why this is important is because you're not allowed to do that in maritime warfare. It's considered a war crime to double tap in maritime warfare versus double tapping in, on land, I guess. This is
this instance, it's a war crime to do the first tap too, not just the double tap. It's the first tap too. That was also a no-no. Let's just be clear on that.
Yeah,
keep going.
No, as if the problem was exactly. Oh, the problem only arises with peak Hegseth. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so U.S. government September 2 attack on a boat off the coast of Trinidad, the first of dozens of strikes on what the Trump administration has claimed are drug trafficking vessels, is drawing increased scrutiny after reports that an immediate second missile strike was ordered to kill survivors. ABC News reporter Rachel Scott asked White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt at a Monday briefing whether the Pentagon's policy had changed, noting that in a subsequent October Caribbean airstrike, survivors were rescued instead of targeted. Was there a decision to handle survivors differently after those airstrikes? Scott asked. Not to my knowledge, Leavitt replied. The answer is chilling, as it doesn't clear up anything about what the policy or legal method governing the strikes, which have been continued for nearly 3 months, according to a Washington Post article, which Scott referenced in her question. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth made the order to kill everybody in the September airstrike, which the White House denies. Now, this story was written on the 1st of December, and at this point in time, the strikes had already been going on for 3 months. So we've been at this.
Sure.
The Trump administration's legal justifications for striking boats in the waters around Central America have reportedly been questioned by Democratic and Republican members of Congress, foreign governments, and the UN. The Defense Department's own law of war manual prohibits declaring no quarter or conducting operations on the basis there shall be no survivors.
Their user guide tells them they can do that. Okay.
Well, they can. They're breaking even their user guide, which is why they're getting...
But again,
it's such point missing.
They wrote this sentence. No, but this sentence is disingenuous. The Department of Defense's own law. Well, my first question would be, who gives a shit what the Department of Defense law of war manual prohibits?
Yeah.
Like, that's not law. Who gives a fuck? So again, they're trying to blur the lines here. But I this whole Pete Hegseth thing, if the guy hasn't been fired yet, he won't be. So, but I'm kind of like reading this stuff, and I'm like, do we care? Do we really care? Like, we've got...
Well, it's big deal because this is the only things that people care about, actually.
Not really. No, I think this is Democrats are trying to make political hay over it. But
that's what I'm saying, though. But I agree with you.
The majority of people, like, you're looking at this and saying, like, does the average person care if some guy in the water, they're all Mexicans to them anyway, so it's like, do they care that some Mexican in the water just got double tapped? No, of course not, because they've got other bigger problems to deal with, like the fact that the shelves are starting to get bare. You're starting to read stories about more supply stocks
it's
on the way.
It's a political cudgel. That's all it is.
Right.
The only thing is it's a political cudgel for Trump's own opposition. I think you're right. By and large.
But literally, we were just talking about the very same government pirating a ship in international waters.
For selling their own oil to their own clients.
If the U.S. government just threw their hands up and said, we don't give a shit anymore, I guess it is what it is now, right? This is just how it's going to be. And the U.S. government will go around imposing their will on other countries, pirating where they can. And as long as it's within their pole, the Western Hemisphere, the rest of us will just all have to accept it, I suppose.
Yeah.
Because,
notice that we're
it's
not violating the rules.
Yeah.
The rules-based international order.
Right. That's why this is all going to fail, man, because like I said, it's 2025 now. Like,
people,
maybe
I would agree with you this way. The people who do pay attention see it. The people who don't pay attention, and maybe they don't want to, maybe they're emotionally invested, maybe they're determined for some reason. There's still some holdouts, and there always will be. But anybody who's politically literate,
right? But what's that old saying? Something I'll butcher it, I'm sure, but something along the lines of, it's harder to get people to accept the truth than to get them to accept that they've been lied to.
Yeah, it's harder. This was Samuel Clemens quote. I think it was like something like, it's harder to convince someone he's been lied to than it is to lie to them. It's harder to basically change somebody's mind than it is to.
Yeah,
I just had it on the tip of my tongue. Jesus, I had to have brain fart.
But you get the sentiment.
It's harder to convince. It's easier to fool a man than it is to convince him he's been fooled.
Yeah,
something
exactly.
Like that.
And that's what we're seeing now, because you look at Ukraine, and that whole narrative is coming apart. You look at the whole DEI movement, that whole thing fell apart. Like all these, values that all of these neoliberal dumbfucks around in all the various Western governments and their people, by the way, because there are a lot of people brainwashed on all this stuff, to your point. It's really difficult for them, after having invested so much of their own capital into whatever it was, for them just to like drop all this stuff like a hot potato. Yeah, it's tough, but that's sunk cost. But people don't understand that, right? Like, how do you tell a parent who just, a couple years ago, their kid got their dick lopped off because Simon is now Sally or whatever. Like, how do you tell them that, what, it was all a friggin' psyop?
That was a bad idea.
Yeah, Simon's just an autistic kid. He's probably a gay, and they can't do anything about it now because we cut off his dick. Sorry about that. Like, it's really difficult to pull that down. Same thing with Ukraine and the values, fighting for freedom. No, you're fighting for grifters who have stolen all the money that's gone there. That's it.
You got to want to believe. You got to want to believe. And the thing is, fewer people want to believe because it's less and less of it, if anything, is in it for them. They're just getting screwed left and right.
Exactly. Like the average people, right? Like, if you're outside these 1%, are these rich cocksuckers who own everything and control everything and buy everything. And, you're just trying to feed your family and have a better life for your kids that you had for yourself, all that quote unquote American dream stuff. And it's just becoming harder and harder as the decades go by to even, have any dreams, because they're all nightmares about how you're going to be able to financially survive. Going over and spending money on, bombing Venezuela, not on anybody's bingo card, right?
Or not on anybody's wish list, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're more concerned about, how is my government going to make my life better? And until people start to asking that question to their governments en masse, the governments will not listen to you. So people got to get out and protest and, vote these clowns out. And if new clowns like Trump come in and they don't do anything, vote them out too. Eventually they'll get the message, form other parties who might have a chance at, a decent government, because that party will say, hey, crap, we see what's going on with the old guard here. We really got to be for the people, or we're just going to become one of them. That's my hope anyway.
It was a gamble, dude. Well, okay, I think it was a gamble, and especially in places like Europe, it's a lot more clear what happened now that the gamble has failed. And on that topic, on the gamble of if we manage to eat Ukraine, we'll be able to bail ourselves out and have our cake and eat it too for decades to come, right? Well, now EU close to a deal on Russian assets. Summit will go until agreement, Cost says. So, dude, what have I said? They're going to try to get those hands on their Russian assets. And like at this point in time, I'm starting to I've heard this whispered, and I'm starting to think that this might be the case. The reason why they are so hell-bent on constantly bringing up these assets is because they've already been dipping into them. Not just the interests, not just the interest payments. They've been dipping into the actual, what would it be called? The principal, right? So I think that's the real reason why we've heard this news like, oh, without the Russian asset seizure, Ukraine will be screwed. Even to the point of without Russian asset seizure, the EU will be screwed. They've said this openly, that our budgets will be screwed if we don't get our hands on those assets, right? And then at the same time, pretending like these assets are for the rebuilding of Ukraine. Yeah, right. Okay, so EU leaders to decide on Ukraine financing at December 18th summit. Belgium seeks guarantees on using frozen Russian assets. We've discussed this before. Euroclear, Belgium, and the Belgians know what time it is. They understand that the financial grift by and large runs on things like trust. You can't unring the bell. But what do they want? They want the guarantees that when the Russians come for their money, it won't just be the Belgians that are on the hook for paying it back, right? They want other countries to also join. And I think maybe France was implying that they might also sign up for that. Anyway, G7 countries.
France specifically said they wouldn't.
They wouldn't? Okay, it was not France then. Okay. G7 countries urged to replicate EU's asset scheme. France even says, they're like, no, we want the assets, but we don't want to suffer the repercussions.
Reuters can't even hide it anymore. They're referring to it as a scheme. Right? Like,
yeah.
Okay, don't even spell check it. Throw it out as is.
The European Union is very close to a solution to finance Ukraine in 2026 and 2027 that would have the support of at least a qualified majority of EU countries, the chairman of EU summits, Antonio Costa, said on Tuesday.
So they're trying to get around Hungary there. They just need a majority now.
Yep. Hungary, Slovak, anybody that could possibly give them an issue with this. EU leaders pledged on October 23rd to bankroll Kiev for the next 2 years as Ukraine fights off a Russian invasion and U.S. financial contributions are drying up. So
it sounds to me like
is in there.
As long as they get a majority who vote to risk share with the Belgians, everyone will be happy, and there you go. But okay, add it to the bill, I guess,
Yeah.
Party going.
So one of the points that we were discussing on the peace plan was the multiple American statements in the peace plan referring to amnesty for all parties after the war was over, which Europe got rid of and replaced with security guarantees, robust security guarantees. Every single instance where that's what they said, the European peace plan replaced it with robust security guarantees. Okay, so Donald Trump's peace plan for Ukraine must not lead to Russia President Vladimir Putin escaping accountability for alleged war crimes, a senior European official said. Do you see why they got rid of those points? They want to hold not Budanov, not Zelensky, not Syrskyi, not Zaluzhny accountable. They want to hold Putin accountable. Jesus. Michael McGarth, the European Commissioner for Justice and Democracy, told Politico on Monday that negotiators should ensure any ceasefire plan does not allow Russia to avoid prosecution, setting what appears to be a new red line for any settlement. So think about that. Is that going to be acceptable to the Russians? Let's think about this peace plan thing that you're talking about, right? This whole the peace plan that we end up settling with, it can't not go directly for Putin personally. That's what you're saying. If you're saying that, that means you understand you're sabotaging the peace plan, because there's no way that the Russians would ever go for that. Not screw that. There's no way anybody would ever go for that. The winning party is going to say, yeah, you know what, you're right. After we win the war, we're also going to just assume responsibility for all of the war crimes and take all of the blame. What is this? Germany after World War I? I don't think so. So there appears to be a new red line for any settlement. Notice, this is not Ukraine's red lines. This is Europe. Europe, the EU, has red lines for Ukraine's peace settlement with Russia. Wait, what the hell is going on? His remarks underlined concerns across Europe over the original version of the U.S. proposal, which proposed a, quote, full amnesty for actions committed during the war and steps to reintegrate Russia into the global economy. Mr. McGarth said, I don't think history will judge kindly any efforts to wipe the slate clean for Russian crimes in Ukraine. I mean, maybe he really drinks the Kool-Aid and thinks that's there's some kind of crazy, overwhelming Russian crimes that went on in Ukraine. Mr. Trump's team has pushed for a reset with Moscow, even as Russia is accused of crimes ranging from the abduction of tens of thousands of Ukrainian children to attacks on civilians in Bucha, Mariupol, and other cities. The fact that you would bring these up after they've been debunked repeatedly. Bucha was a fake. We know that. Mariupol, I mean, the Ukrainians were using the civilians as human shields. Lots of testimony of the actual citizens that were in the area at the time referring to that. And then also the tens of thousands of Ukrainian children also debunked. No, it doesn't matter. All of these things are debunked. They just restate them, right? They just like assert them. It's an axiom. This is what happened, right? We will do so to allow for impunity for those crimes. We would be sowing the seeds of the next round of aggression and the next invasion, Mr. McGarth added. And I believe that it would be a historic mistake of huge proportions. Ukraine's prosecutors say they have opened more than 178,000 investigations into suspected Russian crimes since the invasion began. Whoop-de-doo. A UN commission reported last month that Russian authorities had committed crimes against humanity through drone attacks on civilians and had carried out the war crimes of forcible transfer and deportation. We Ukraine's doing the same thing. What about the forceful recruitment of male population to shove them into a meat grinder? We're hearing now that conscripts are being sent to the front without any military training. No, that's not the problem. The problem is that, Vladimir Putin's a criminal. We can't give up on the rights of the victims of Russian aggression and Russian crimes, Mr. McGarth said. Anyway, Mr. McGarth is living in La La Land, and this is the only reason for that is to sabotage the talks. There's no other reason.
But people reading this stuff, they just don't care. Like, all the Europeans have left.
I've been to Twitter recently. Some people care.
Nah, they're bots, dude. All the people care about it. They don't care about this. When they start talking about values and fighting for freedoms and blah, 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 people are just tuned out. They've given up on that whole ideal because they know how corrupt this bunch is now. And they see, I go back to how they're not addressing the needs of the people. So nobody's going to buy this stuff. Like when we were going through that article and I was just like, okay, whatever, buddy. Like, you're irrelevant. Yeah. Your argument is completely irrelevant. It doesn't matter anymore. That was years ago. Like, that's a narrative that's so tired now. Like, get with 2025, almost into 2026, where we're talking about land and how the borders are going to be divided up because Russia's won the war. That's where the present is. It's not talking about this nonsense about judges and blah, blah, blah. Like, nobody cares about this faggotry. And that's why nobody in Europe supports this bunch anymore, because this is all the crap that they have. This is the crap that they have.
The elites are obsessed with it. The elites are singularly obsessed with it, and yeah, we can see that their popularity has taken a dump. Okay, so we're starting to run low on time. So here, let's touch on the Ukraine's revised 20-point peace plan. All right, Russia's defense ministry said its forces shot down 287 Ukrainian drones overnight and Tuesday morning, blah, blah, blah. 40 of the drones, blah, blah, blah. Spokesperson, okay. I'm trying to find latest exchanges came soon after Zelensky said his negotiating team was, quote, finalizing work on the 20 points of a fundamental document that could define the parameters for ending the war. Zelensky was referring to the 20-point peace settlement proposal that the Ukrainian, U.S., and European leaders have been working on for several weeks. A Ukrainian official close to the peace talks told ABC News on Thursday morning that Ukraine had handled the U.S. revised 20-point peace plan. That Ukraine had handed the U.S. a revised 20-point peace plan. So I still haven't seen this peace plan, by the way, this revised plan. The official noted that the revised peace plan contains some new ideas regarding territories and control over the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant. This is not a new version. It is the same 20 points, only with some of them have been slightly rethought, the official said. Ukrainian and American negotiating teams are expected to hold online consultations on Thursday regarding the peace plan, but the main topics will be security guarantees, not the revised points of the plan. Right now, there are 3 documents: the basic 20 points, the security guarantees, and the document on economy and reconstruction. The Ukrainian official told ABC News yesterday, we discussed the economy. Today, it's the guarantees. Russia continued its long-range strike campaign on Ukraine overnight. Okay, anyway, so the Ukraine, so we're talking about the revised plan, right? Anyway, now, while they're so this is let's see, this is today's, okay, I believe this is today's news. This is today's news, right? So while this is happening, I think there's no coincidence that we're getting this in the news today, because this is happening at the same time, let's go to TASS, as Lavrov talks security guarantees and negotiations with U.S. at a roundtable with ambassadors. So they're rehashing this news to help try to grab headline attention while this is going on. While the actual adults are actually discussing how it's actually going to go down, they're throwing this fit. The Russian side has submitted additional proposals regarding collective security guarantees to the United States. Russia's top diplomat Sergei Lavrov stated at a roundtable discussion on Ukraine with ambassadors. The ongoing Russia-U.S. talks are aimed at finding a long-term solution to end the Ukraine conflict, he noted. Notice, EU's nowhere in this story. Even Ukraine is nowhere in this story, right? We're just trying to end the Ukraine conflict. TASS has compiled the key takeaways from statements by the Russian foreign minister. Speculations around the Ukraine conflict. Russia has reported multiple bogus news and speculations about Ukraine. Lavrov said, quote, we believe that such actions initiated by our Western colleagues are mostly aimed at hampering efforts to find a solution at talks and prolong the conflict, he stated. That's exactly what I was saying last week. By doing so, Lavrov continued, the Europeans are actually disrupting U.S. President Donald Trump's initiative to, quote, find a way out that would help remove the root cause of the Ukraine crisis. Western countries are attempting to use the Ukraine conflict to distract attention from Palestine and other challenging issues facing the global community. Nobody in Europe mentions the root causes of the Ukraine conflict or the need to remove those. They, quote, the only demand an immediate ceasefire to give Ukraine and then the Europeans some respite, and then, when time, at least somehow to support the Kiev regime with weapons and money. And when we go over the revised peace plan, it's all about, of course, besides just security guarantees, ceasefire, right? That's what they want to do. Keep wanting to get that ceasefire going. A blitzkrieg against Russia plotted by the West with Ukrainian involvement has failed. Europe would like to, quote, sow the seeds of a new conflict right now, as it has publicly indicated that it's getting ready for that, which Europe has. We're getting ready to go to war with the Russians, and by what, 2029 or something? A militaristic frenzy resigns in Europe today, and if they decide to go to war, Russia is ready at the drop of a hat. The West did not react in any way to Ukraine's decision to suspend negotiations with Moscow, nor did they try to prod the Kiev regime into at least creating the impression of readiness for political regulation. That's right, because Ukraine is trying to run to the Europeans and try to get a front now against the Russians as well as against the Americans going. Okay, Russia-U.S. talks. The ongoing talks between Russia and the United States are dedicated to, quote, finding a long-term solution to remove the root causes. That's what the Russians always bring up, the root causes, and that nobody else likes to bring up. Of the Ukraine conflict. Trump sincerely seeks ways to resolve the Ukraine conflict through political and diplomatic methods. We welcome this. During their most recent meeting in the Kremlin, Russian President Vladimir Putin and U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff cleared up all misunderstandings between Moscow and Washington. Quote, this was an extremely important result because there was a certain impasse following the summit in Anchorage. The Americans are interested in understanding the root causes of the Ukraine crisis, and that was reflected during the meeting of Presidents Putin and Trump in Anchorage on August 15th. Mutual understandings were reached there, which we stand by and believe can serve as a starting point for a settlement. That's right. We're going back to the table. Like, imagine this would be so humiliating if it was apparent what's going on here. The Americans tried to do this some cheeky breaky, and they ended up having to walk with the tails between their legs back to the negotiating table. The Americans are interested in understanding the root causes of the Ukraine conflict. Okay, blah, blah. Security guarantees. Russia has submitted additional proposals regarding collective security guarantees to the United States. Quote, we understand that when discussing security guarantees, we cannot focus on Ukraine alone. That's right. Why do we always talk about security guarantees for Ukraine? What about security guarantees for Russia, right? Russia harbors no aggressive plans against NATO members or EU countries and is thus ready to enter into written pacts with them to this effect. Of course, on a collective and mutual basis. That was part of the reason why the Europeans got rid of the provision about NATO not expanding, and they replaced it with there's no consensus that currently exists in NATO right now, right? Where Vladimir Putin is saying that's not acceptable. It has to be on a mutual basis. The Ukraine is not going to win. They're not going to get a win out of this. The West has chosen to consider Russia as a perpetual enemy, and it has resolutely refused to provide mutually binding security guarantees. Casualties sustained by Ukrainian troops. Okay, Ukrainian casualties from the conflict have exceeded 1 million and are still mounting. The Kiev regime, originally established as a fiercely ideological military entity, has now devolved into a criminal gang. Moscow has handed over more than 11,000 bodies of fallen Ukrainian soldiers to Kiev, and in return has received 201 Russian bodies. So anyway, as the real big boys are actually sitting at the table that actually matters, we're getting this pathetic attempt to take over headlines, right? Ukraine hands in revised 20-point peace plan, Reuters, front page news, quoting basically, I think it was ABC that broke the story.
Yeah, and I mean, my thoughts on Ukraine's peace plan. Nobody asked them for it. The United
and what
States,
is Europe doing, advising them on? Nobody asked you either, Europe.
Well, yeah, I think at the end of the day, all we're seeing now is a whole bunch of theater from the Europeans in Ukraine. And you're also seeing theater from the Americans and the Russians too, right? Like, I think that, and I'll go back to the American message has been clear since J.D. Vance at Munich back in February, whenever it was. And the message to the Europeans, if they don't know it already, is simple. We're pulling out. We're focusing on elsewhere. If you guys want to pick up the slack, great. Give Lockheed Martin a call. Give whoever else a call. That we're happy to sell you weapons, but we're getting out of this whole proxy game in Ukraine. So,
like we always said, before Trump got elected.
So they've been trying to get the Europeans alongside with that for the last several months since February. The Europeans are like petulant children who refuse to hear, and they throw temper tantrums, and they have their little fits. And frankly, I think now America is kind of at, like I said at the very beginning of this episode, you guys are at the end of your rope with the Europeans. The strategy document showed that. And I think basically what the message to Zelensky and the Europeans is, again, we're going to reiterate our message to you. We're pulling out. If you want weapons, we're happy to sell them to you. But the only change now is effective X date. You're not getting any more ISR from us. Any of that intelligence. Sorry, we can't help you with that because we got to focus on other things. And we're trying to build our relationship.
As Garland Nixon said years ago, you are what your record says you are. And the way that we ducked out of Afghanistan is going to repeat itself in Ukraine. Or in the way we ducked out of Vietnam, it's going to repeat itself. They're going to continue pressing this.
The U.S.
BS.
has been consistent with their message. Russia has been consistent with their goals and their demands. I think throughout the last 6-7 months, while they were trying to get the Europeans on board, sure, the Americans were trying to get the Russians to walk away from some of their demands and their goals. The Russians have also been very clear. So you've got the Americans who have been very clear to the Europeans and the Ukrainians. You've got the Russians who have been very clear to the Americans. And now I think the Americans are just like, you know what? We're clear with Russia. We're going to go focus on that. We're going to focus on Venezuela and whatever horse shit we can get involved in. Like I said, God be with you, Europeans. Let us know if you need any weapons. And that's where it's at. So now it's nut cutting time for Europe. Do you cut that, $1 trillion check to rearm? Do you cut, God knows whatever else? Like it's going to be chaos there if that happens.
I mean, they probably want to turn the Europeans into a long-term customer for our defense production.
But
it's got to be the plan.
Europe just doesn't have the money.
Yeah, but if they're our vassals, we'll extract whatever we can from them, I'm sure.
But you won't be their vassals anymore, I think. That's the thing. Also, with the pullout, you're going to see them also, I would assume sooner than later, start to reduce the number of troops over in Germany and wherever else they're stationed.
In Poland and Romania. Okay, well, I think it's getting up to the point where we should start doing our 2 scoops. And the first story that I have for 2 scoops, by the way, cue up yours as well. That I have, this is a hilarious story, which is being completely buried on purpose and censored in the Western media, but it went viral in the French media and in Russian media as well. Macron's old IQ test that he did before joining Rothschild and Company shows a score of 89, making a gorilla named Coco, outperformed him by 6 IQ points. It seems clear that the chosen global elites use a meritocracy to select the most qualified candidates and serve them. So this is the only English language stuff that you know what I should have done? I should have just used a translator for some French stories, but whatever. Basically,
in fairness, though, Coco is pretty smart,
Yeah, in fairness, Coco's language abilities obviously outperform Macron's and spatial reasoning and all this stuff, right? It's crazy. So basically, as this post cheekily says, brings up the quote unquote meritocracy. So yeah, right. The smartest and best among us rise to the top, the creme de la creme. Macron is a freaking moron. Now, I think the IQ test in general is a problematic measure of maybe general intelligence, but I think it says something. I definitely think this says something, especially he had to do this for work before joining his banking job, and he still got the job. Maybe that's why they're like, oh, this is perfect. This guy's such a dumbass. This is exactly who we need.
This is exactly who we need. Yep.
So anyway, Macron is maybe it's because he mostly speaks in French that you don't understand just how dumb he is, but apparently he's a freaking moron. And on the breakdown of the IQ test, let me see. Here's a little video of it. Let me see if I can see a breakdown of it. Basically, his highest score was for language, which was at a 91, which is still below average, right? If average IQ is 100, yeah, there's Coco, the very smart gorilla. I mean, let's be honest, it'll be hard to compete with that gorilla, especially for this man. I mean, look at him. You can just tell. I can't unsee it now. So anyway, Macron is an idiot, and we just have one more way to be able to all see that. Do you have your video?
Mine. Yeah. So this is over in Russia.
I'll show you mine. You show me yours first. What is that? Rise Against. Oh, look at this. They're like, hey, let's play some games with the bear. Hey, bear wrestling. Bear's taking
absolutely crazy.
Bear wrestling is a thing, dude, in Russia.
And Brussels wants to send some, liberal arts major from, Belgium to go fight these guys? No, I wouldn't.
They're having so much fun with that bear. That bear is enjoying it. Let's be honest and let's be fair here. I'm sure I brought this up before, but Russian bears are not as scary as American bears. Russian brown bears are a lot friendlier. They're considered a lot friendlier, and they're considered a lot less dangerous.
They're not as stressed out about their mortgage. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, there's a lot of territory in Russia for them to walk around. Like, you ever hear that story about that albino grizzly bear who twice got mistaken for a polar bear, and so they deported him from Yellowstone National Park up to Alaska, and he almost starved to death twice before they were like, oh my god, this guy can't live in this environment. What have we been doing? So Russian bears don't have that kind of problem, They have a lot of land to walk around in, and they're at home all over the place. So yeah, I mean, it is funny, but also for people that aren't aware, usually the bears that wrestle, it's usually bears that have been wrestling with people since an early age. So in order to not be in the situation where the bear goes full aggro, and just clicks in pull out the claws and freaking smash your skull in because you're beating him at wrestling, which can happen. Since it's been doing it since a very young age, it understands the game more.
Well, I wouldn't take my chances with that claw, but
I still wouldn't take my chances. Exactly, that thing still has its teeth and claws that can tear all three of you open in 2 seconds, no problem. But okay, I think that is going to be our episode 36, as far as I'm aware, of Hell in a Handbasket. Thank you very much for our fan base, such as we have one, for joining us. And I guess we'll be seeing y'all next week. Peace.
Alrighty. Cheers.